good evening and welcome to our inaugural Forever Bound Adoption Adoption 101 panel. We're excited to be with all of you tonight, and with those that are in cyberspace on Facebook, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started with our panel because we're starting a little bit late. Let me introduce myself first, and then we'll introduce each of the panel members. My name is Steve Sunday, and I'm President and CEO of Forever Bound Adoption and advisor to the organization United for Adoption. And I've been involved with adoption for 38 years, and it's just been a wonderful life journey, and I'm so excited to be here tonight with all those joining us on the panel and those that are in the studio audience, and seeing all the some little special children that are growing up faster than you would think. So with that in mind, let me turn the mic first over to our adoptive parents.
I am Cammie, and this is my husband Eric. We have been married for 11 years this year. He probably thinks it's been a lot, or feels that it's been a lot longer than that. We suffered from infertility for 9 of those years, doing several failed IUIs and 4 IVFs, one resulting in a pregnancy of twins, which later became a miscarriage and an ectopic pregnancy. Adoption has always been near to me, well, to both of us, but especially me. I have 2 adoptive uncles and some best friends that are adopted. I always knew that I would adopt, but during the 9 years that we had been trying to get pregnant, we had never felt that it was the right time until probably about 2 years ago. We have adopted a little girl. She is 16 months, and she is the light of our life. She is a blessing and a miracle, and we would go through everything again to get to that point and to have her in our family. So that is us.
Okay, I am Marisa. I'm a birth mom. It'll be 3 years in November. I didn't know anything about adoption, even though, frankly enough, it was kind of in my family because I had a cousin who placed for adoption but didn't really know anything about adoption. When I got pregnant, my mom reached out to a family friend and we found Steve, and we went from there, and then I found the best family I could possibly find for my cute little girl, so yeah.
I'm Paula. I'm birth grandma, Marisa's mom, and yeah, never thought we'd be on this path. Just over 2 years ago, with being told that your daughter's pregnant and not knowing what to do at that point. It was definitely a blessing in our life to be able to find Forever Bound Adoption, and Steve, he was able to direct us, and definitely we were blessed with a wonderful family.
My name is Renae. I was adopted 26 years ago by my parents, and being adopted has been one of the greatest blessings in my life, to not only have the parents that I have, but to also know and feel the love of my birth mom, who did place me with the parents that I have. And so being adopted has been such a great blessing and has changed my life in many ways.
Thank you. It's going to be nice to get to know all of you a lot better in the next 45 minutes or so that we're asking questions. I'm going to start off with a question, and it's really for everyone up here, and Maria, we're going to start with you first. But the question to all of you is going to be, so be thinking about it, is, was your adoption opened or closed? And how do you feel about your relationship with both your adoptive parents or your birth parents, whatever's appropriate in your experience? How do you feel about that, and has it changed over time? So, Maria.
So my adoption is kind of a unique one in some ways. It's an open adoption because my parents know my birth mom. They helped her a lot during the process of her when she was pregnant with me and before she had me, but I've actually never met her yet. And so we're friends on Facebook, and I admire her in so many ways, but I've never had the chance to meet her, although I really want to. But my parents have a really good relationship with her, and my whole life it's been really cool to just hear them talk about her. I've known I've been adopted my whole life. It's never been as long as I can remember. And just knowing that, and knowing that I have not only my parents' love, but also the love of someone else who, even though I've never met her, it's really cool to me to be able to feel that love and to hopefully one day be able to build that relationship a little more with her personally myself. But I've always loved knowing that my parents have loved her and have known her for so long, and how she's played a role in my life in that way.
Ours is very open. We were very blessed to have a family that we basically look at it as it's now an extended family. We just have a much larger family than we had before. We are included in special occasions, holidays, whatever, even just grandma, I get to go have a play date every once in a while. So it's been a very open adoption, and it is growing each day. It's like when we first met with them, we really didn't know what to expect. We weren't sure what to ask for, what to need, and as we discussed it at that point, we just decided that we would just let this evolve as what it naturally should be and what would be in the best interest of our little girl.
To go off of that too, it has kind of changed because when going into it, we kind of just had like, this is how it's going to be. Every like so often we'll get to see pictures, videos and stuff. But like my mom said, there's times where I'll get a phone call and it's like, hey, do you work this weekend? No? Let's go camping. Okay, sure, let's go. So it's definitely gotten open, but also we went from talking all the time to me being okay not talking all the time. Like I got to the point where I don't have to like hear from them all the time. We can go so often and just be like, oh yeah, they're doing their thing and I'm doing my thing. So I think that's helped a lot too.
So we also have an open adoption, and we have a close relationship with both the birth mother and the birth father, and it's a great relationship with both of them. So originally it was we got to know our birth mother while she was pregnant for about 7 months, 6 or 7 months before our daughter was born. And so that was really cool to get to know her, and we met up with her once a month at least, and we had a group text going on where we would ask each other get to know you questions, and so that was really cool. We were really close to her. And then after our daughter was born, that's when we met our birth father, and he's just an awesome guy as well, just really friendly, sweet guy. And so we feel really lucky to have such great birth parents. They're really respectful, but also, I don't know, we just have a great loving relationship. I think that's all I can say. We talk to them quite a bit. So, yeah.
I just want to say, as everyone was talking, I was kind of thinking about the open adoption and how it has worked so well for us. But at the same time, every adoption is different. So that's why when Eric was saying we valued the time that we got to know our birth mom before she had the baby, so we could get to know her, and kind of led us into the relationship that we have with her today, and the respect and the love that we have, and how excited we are to teach our little girl about her and see them have a relationship together.
So what you're hearing tonight is 5 unique stories, but all stories are different, and we don't represent all experiences that people have had, but what we're doing tonight is sharing ones of the folks that are here with us. So what kind of advice And we'll ask this question to everybody but Maria, okay? The question is about what kind of advice would you give to either adoptive couples or expectant parents or birth parents about what you need to do in order to have a positive, healthy, open relationship? And maybe we'll go back down this way and start with you guys. Do that way.
So, and we were talking about this, about what we thought had been the most helpful thing. And what was really helpful is with Forever Bound, we did an openness plan with our daughter's birth mother, and the caseworker was part of that too. And so it was really helpful for us to kind of come together and decide what we wanted the openness plan to look like, how much contact our birth mother wanted at first, and how she wanted that to kind of, gradually go as time went on. And then the caseworker was there to just kind of give input on what's reasonable and what's too little or too much. And so it's really helpful because now we both have an expectation of what it looks like and what each other's needs are. And so I'd say that's really important.
The other thing along with that, because that gave us, in our situation, gave us expectations for kind of what was going to happen, knowing that, of course, we'd probably deviate from that. You were always told to under-promise and over-deliver. Recently, we've also kind of checked in with our birth mother in particularly to make sure that things are going how she had wanted, and if there were any changes that she wanted to be made. So that would be the only other thing that I would say that has been a positive, is to keep kind of checking in and seeing how they're doing.
For my situation, the best thing that I could probably give is communication. Our communication is very, very good. I can text the adoptive mom and just be like, I'm really struggling today because this happened and it's been 3 years. And they're right there to support it and help. But I think communication is the best part, to be on the same page with each other and just to let each other know that not only is it hard for us, but it's hard for them too. So just to support each other and be family.
Yeah, I have to reiterate, it's definitely communication. You just need to be open and honest with each other on both sides of the fence, because you're both going through different things, but also the same type of things. So if there's an issue, it's best to be open and honest about it. It's nice that we live in the day and age that we do, where you can email or text, so you don't have to do a face-to-face, or, kind of give someone, if you're having an issue or something's going on, you're able to give that information to them and let them kind of dwell on it and come up with their response, so that you can communicate a little bit better rather than, face-to-face and being all upset about it if there's something going on. But I definitely think definitely open and communication is the key.
So Renae, question for you down there. Your experience is not as open as what you're hearing from some of the other panel people, but is there information about your adoption that you wish you had, that you didn't get?
Honestly, I feel like my parents have been really open with me about my adoption, which has been really nice. Like I mentioned before, I've known since I was born, essentially, that I was adopted, as young as I can understand, that I was adopted. And there were times I wish I knew more about my birth mom, but I realized that that would come with time as I got older, and I grew to understand it more. And so I feel like where things are now is where it's supposed to be for me personally in my life, with my relationship with her, and I'm okay with that. I do want to one day meet her and to develop that relationship more, but I feel like the way it's developed is the way that it's supposed to be, and I've been really pretty comfortable with the way that it's been.
Thank you. The best adoption relationships are based on a relationship, and establishing a relationship, like any kind of relationship you have, those that are the strongest are those that are people who kind of work at it. So one question, we'll start with Tammy and Eric, about what did it, as you have a relationship with your birth mother and her family, what kind of things do you wish they knew about from your perspective about adoption and your experience, and maybe the struggles that sometimes it is to be an adoptive parent and try to navigate the relationship with a birth family?
I would say, well, right now our little girl is 16 months, and our lives are getting busier, and their lives are getting, the birth mother and the birth father's lives are getting busier. And at this time, I think that I would just kind of reassure them that no matter how busy life gets, we're family. They will always be in our life. The only other thing about our experience that, I don't know, when our little girl was first came into our family, we had been trying for we've been married for 10 years. And we had wanted a family that entire time. And we had such a great support system and family, so everyone was excited for us. We had her first 2 months, there was not a day that went by that we did not have a visitor that came to our house. So that, at that time, it was overwhelming for us. Turned positive. But we also had the birth father and his family come in our life a week after our little girl was born. And we had the birth mother's relatives all coming and not knowing, she didn't know that they were coming. So that was the only kind of, I think, difficult time. But at the same time, it was an awesome time because you were surrounded by so much love, and there was such a special spirit that came during that time. So I would say that that was a hard time, but more of a kind of a positive time for us, and seeing all of the love that surrounds adoption.
I actually remember the visit to your home, talking about some of those issues, because it is a challenge for kind of a modern adoptive family who's trying to maintain a relationship with a birth mother's family and birth mother, and birth father and birth father's family. And I can certainly relate to when you talk about we had somebody there every day for 2 months because everybody wanted a piece of the experience. And so that is hard and sometimes overwhelming. Okay. All right, let's shift to Marisa and Paula. So your question is what do you wish your adoptive family knew about your experience that maybe they don't know yet? And since they're in the audience, I guess they're going to know after this.
Well, I'm actually very blessed. We have a very unique situation. It's, when I say open adoption, like, think that, but like times 100. Like, so that question's actually pretty hard for me because they know everything. I talk to them all the time. She knows the struggles I went through. I remember it was a week after I had placed her, and I just texted her and I'm like, I know this isn't what we talked about, but I'm really struggling. I just want to see her. Is there any way I can see her? And right after their doctor's appointment for her, they came over and just let me snuggle her for a little bit. So they know everything. So that question's really hard for me because we talk all the time.
I think the only thing with my experience, mine and my husband's on the grandparent side, would be that that we truly were trying to find a way to make sure that we were being respectful and that we honored them as the adoptive family. We didn't want to, overstep our bounds, basically. I mean, not that we really understood what those bounds were at the time, but we definitely wanted I want them to know that we really wanted to make sure that they understand that we wanted them to be that family for her. We wanted them to have that time to create those bonds and to be able to be that family that we were hoping we would have for our granddaughter. So just from our side, we definitely were just looking at finding ways to, like I say, be respectful and to be able to honor what they were doing, but also be able to get the information about her, to be able to see pictures and that, which we were truly grateful for. So to be able to be connected, but also to make sure that we did want them to be able to bond and be that family that we wanted them to be.
Okay, thank you. Renae, question for you. If there was something about your adoption experience that you would want to share with your family, what would it be?
I've actually thought a lot about this question. I think as I've grown up, I'm in the field of social work for a reason. I'm very interested in helping with adoptions now. But I think the thing I would want my birth mom in particular to know is I'm grateful that she gave me my best shot, because I know that was so hard for her, but she was willing to let me go because she loved me so much. And I've realized that now as I've gotten older. I realized the love that it took for her to do that, and the love that my parents have for me now. And that's why adoption is such a beautiful process, and there's just so much love for an individual. And so that is what I wanted to know, is that I recognize the courage and the love that it took for her to do that, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
Thanks for sharing that. So back to Eric and Cammie. So 10 years of marriage and no children, and then so how did you get to the point where you decided that adoption was for you, and how did you go about deciding how to get through that process?
I think it was kind of a natural progression. We had always thought that we might adopt someday, but it just never seemed like it was the time to do that. We were doing a lot of fertility treatments and did that for several years. And it was always in the back of our minds that, yeah, adoption was definitely a great option. And it wasn't until just about a year before our daughter was born that we really felt like, okay, now's the time, we should really get going on this adoption thing. And it was cool. It worked out. I know it's not this way for everyone, and it probably wasn't. At the time, it didn't seem as perfect as it seems now in hindsight. But looking back, everything just fell together so perfectly. And it's really amazing how things just came together, how our birth mother found us, and how much we have in common with her. It's really cool.
When we started the adoption process, it was all kind of an overwhelming thing, just because there's so many agencies, especially in Utah now. So the one thing that helped me especially is talking to several adoptive couples, birth moms, and just kind of getting their different experiences with the different agencies. We did adopt through Forever Bound, and we had an awesome experience with them, and would recommend them to anyone.
Marisa and Paula. When you found out that you were pregnant and you were trying to decide where to go and what to do and how do I face this and what's involved and what are my options? What helped you as you went through that decision-making process?
Well, for the longest time, I didn't want to believe I was pregnant. I was told I couldn't have kids when I was 15 because of girl issues. But, so when I found out, I was like, no, it's a cyst, it's something this. So going into it, I told my mom, just thinking like, whatever, this is gonna be like a dream or something. And then I started talking to my mom about options because I remember sitting at the counter, looking at my mom and being like, Mom, I don't feel like this baby is mine. And so we started looking at options, and we first met with a lawyer, which after talking to him, I looked at my mom and I was like, cool, I'm gonna be a single mom. I don't care what it's gonna take, because what they told me was, felt like I was auctioning my baby off, and that didn't feel right to me. I didn't want a car, I didn't want an apartment, I didn't want a line of credit. That's not me. And then my mom was like, well, let's try this, like, one more step. And I was like, okay, whatever. But then we found Steve through a family friend, and sitting down with him and going over everything, I was still kind of hesitant because she still is my child in a way. And what helped me the most was him going over open adoptions and how it goes from visits, pictures, and just how you and the family connect and grow. And after hearing that, I knew that this is definitely what was my plan.
When she first told me that she was pregnant, after the initial shock, it was, of course, what are we going to do? And for the first while there, she was going to raise the child on her own, and so of course it's wondering how we're going to do that. She's living at home, and how we were going to be able to help support her do that. And then as we got talking, and like I say, I never wanted to push her either way. It was her decision to make. But we did get the opportunity to introduce adoption into the picture as another option. And I did have a dear friend that I reached out to, and she was the one that told us about Forever Bound. And once we did meet with Steve, it was wonderful because he was able to give us the information that we didn't have a clue about. He was able to answer our questions and explain the process of what adoption is, and it was able to, like I say, Marisa was able to at that point make that decision that adoption was what was best for our little girl.
Okay, so going back, let's go back this way again with a similar question, which is, what kind of expectations do you believe as far as help and resources, and again, be as open as you can, because really you're talking to a public that that may be in a similar situation. So how would you, what kind of things would you look for in either an organization or a person that was going to help you through an unplanned pregnancy or an adoption experience? So coming back.
Just to say, on my end, from what I have appreciated with what we've gotten, is I would expect them to have the information needed in order to the steps involved to take, and also to be able to, like Steve did, beyond the actual adoption, and for my daughter's case, in being able to help her find a birth mother support group, different things like that will help beyond, because this is a lifelong thing. There's always going to be things that come up that trigger different things. So for that professional, I would expect them to be able to provide ongoing information for the birth mom, as well as the adopted parents, of things that they can do to continue to help them through the process of adoption for their lifetime.
I I do have to talk about birth mom groups because those are what got me through some of the hardest times, because going into it, you kind of feel left out. You don't feel like someone's gone through this. I cried to my mom so much because I felt so alone. And then I found birth mom groups, and just sitting there with other birth moms and just hearing their stories, and I'm not alone. Like, people know what I'm going through. So to have places to go like that is definitely what's needed, and information on it, and places that I can go and not be afraid to ask a question that maybe I was afraid to ask Steve or the adoptive couple. Like, I can go and be like, is this normal? Or maybe like, oh, you didn't have that? Well, like, how can I maybe get that? So I think for a birth mom to find groups is what I would go for.
So Marisa brings up a good point, and one that we would stress is be important, because in the state of Utah, there's several birth parent groups that are held, life after placement, and LDS Family Services has a group down in Salt Lake. So there are some groups that are, and if you're looking for information on groups, then you'll find them both on the Forever Bound website, the United for Adoption website, and also the Utah Adoption Council website if someone is looking for resources such as groups. So, okay, same question.
So, I think for us, the biggest thing was, what we liked about Forever Bound and when we first met with Steve was just the wealth of information he was. He had so many details about the ins and outs, and we were still pretty fresh. We didn't know a lot about what to expect. And then we had a lot of great communication. Steve kind of kept us posted on status and things like that. So that was the biggest thing, just the communication, knowing what was going on, knowing what to expect. And something else we really appreciated, so we actually had a failed adoption like 6 months prior to our daughter being born. And what we really appreciate about that situation is, and it's kind of an interesting story. So we found out on Valentine's Day that we were matched, but the baby was born the following, like 4 days later. So we were like thrilled, but also freaked out. So we went shopping and bought all the baby stuff, but then as the delivery date came, so she was overdue, and then she just kind of went missing. Like, she kept going missing, and then they'd find her again, and she'd go missing. So it was like a roller coaster. But Steve really didn't give us false hope. He was straight with us and candid, and so that was really helpful. And we also learned that it's pretty normal. You know, it's not the end of the world. In fact, it just opened the door for the miracle that is Ivy, our baby, coming along just a few months later.
Okay, so we're going to go back the same way. And so the next question is, one of the things that is common in adoption is how expensive it is. And so most of the adoptive couples will find out very quickly as they're exploring options of adoption, how expensive adoption is. And so maybe just a question for you two as far as what kinds of, as you've become adoptive parents and as you've been through the fee piece and how to navigate that, what have you found that have kind of helped you along the way as you were trying to not only adopt, but afford adoption?
So, and I think our situation was a little bit interesting because of, we've been married for so long and both working and no kids, and so we were fortunately able to save up pretty well. And we knew that, fertility treatments were expensive and adoption was expensive, so we were trying to be really careful with our money for that entire time. But then we also, through Forever Bound, found the Unique Adoption Fund, which was a really awesome organization. And what they do is they match, at least at the time, yeah, it was 50 cents to the dollar of what you are, I guess, contributing to the adoption or the money that you want them to do that partial match for. And so that was incredibly helpful. And then for us, something, and then the rest we paid out of pocket, but there are some cool reimbursement options. Of course, the IRS reimburses just a kind of a small portion of that. And then also a lot of employers have an adoption assistance or reimbursement plan. And with my employer, that was incredibly helpful.
So, compliment to Eric and Cammie too, is not only have they tried to figure out a way to, be able to pay for their own adoption, but they also leveraged their company, the company they work for, to leverage their benefits in adoption to help other couples. So they've actually been able to figure out ways to get others to donate to help other adoptive couples adopt. And so to me, one of the beautiful things about adoption is people helping people. And just because things are expensive, it doesn't mean that there isn't somebody out there that wants to be generous with either their time or their money to help families build their families through adoption. So, Paula, this next two questions are for you. Okay? So the first one is, and maybe you've kind of addressed this a little bit, but just want to get a little bit more to the question around what kind of fears did you have for Marisa when you found out she was pregnant? Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts during that time?
Thought process at that time, besides being freaked out. I think fear-wise for her would be, at the time, was of course if she chose to parent, that how she would be able to do that. And like I say, is she working, she's living at home and working part-time. The fear of the birth father, what his involvement wanted to be. At the time he had left the picture, but we didn't know, so that was a fear. A fear of her, of how it would affect her mindset, either way, whether she parented or placed for adoption. Just my biggest fear as a mom was just how it would affect her emotionally for the rest of her life.
So how do you feel that, what was some of the things that worked well as far as providing support to Marisa?
One was a lot of prayer, but also being able to find other people that had gone through that type of situation, being able to help. Like I say, my friend had adopted a number of children, and she was the one who introduced us to Forever Bound. So being able to find people to talk to in order to be able to help Marisa be able to understand what her options were, that was a good thing. And then just with some of the information that Steve gave us in the birth father area, how the Utah law works and how things work out through the adoption, that if he doesn't step up and claim his right, then we don't really have to worry about that. That he loses that right under the Utah law. So getting the information, basically what really helped is getting as much information for the questions that we had, and even questions we didn't know we had, in order to be able to help her with that. And then again, with finding a support group that would help her through the emotional part of it.
Thank you. Marisa, you're next. So what was the most helpful things that your parents did to support you during your pregnancy, adoption, and post-adoption?
Well, like my mom said, she has been supportive since I told her I was pregnant, which took me by surprise, but Thanks, Mom. At first, my dad wasn't really supportive. He wanted me to parent. And then when we actually met the couple is when he actually finally got on board being supportive. So what they've really done for me is just been there for me when I'm feeling alone, when I just want to be left alone. They don't typically let me, which is probably a good idea, but and just the love they give me, letting me cry if I need to. One of the biggest helps is just like right now is watching my dad be a grandpa to the kids and how great he is with them, how great my mom is with them, and just having the support and love from everyone.
Not only is your dad a good grandpa, but he moonlights as Santa Claus.
True fact. Remember that.
So this question is really for both of you. One of you can answer it first. But the question to you, Marisa, would be, how do you think you're different today because of your experience? And Paula will be the same thing. What do you see different in Marisa because of her experience?
I think that this experience has been the biggest blessing in my life. Before, I didn't care where my money went. I didn't care if I had a car payment. I didn't care if I needed to get food, whatever. I did not care. If I wanted to go out and party, I was going out to party. If I wanted to be out till 2, 3 a.m., I'm not coming home till 4 because my friends talked me into staying out longer. And with this experience, I have taken a step back and realized that that's not a life I want to live. And it's definitely helped me grow into, I don't want to say a better person, because before this miracle baby, it was all about me. It was my way or the highway. I didn't care what you thought. If you didn't want it my way, there's the door. And now with this beautiful baby in my life, it has taught me that it's okay not to have it my way all the time.
And I think that's one of the big things that taught her how to be selfless, to put somebody's needs ahead of her own. And I also think it's taught her that choices have consequences, not only for herself, but for a lot of other people that are around her. So I think it's made her grow up and be a lot more aware of the things that she decides to do with her life.
All right. So, going to change focus just a little bit. I know I'm one of the oldest people in the room, and I've been around adoption for 38 years, and so I've seen a lot of different changes over the years, and many of them are so much better today than they were in the dark ages. But from your experience growing up, which is a time period 26 years ago as far as birth, did you, growing up, feel like you had people around you who were exposed to adoption, friends that were adopted, people who you could identify with as an adopted child?
So I think for me, I didn't really know a lot of other people who were adopted, but the support system I had with my parents was really important, and it really helped me just grow and develop because they were so open about everything with me, which I think really helped because a lot of people didn't understand the process of adoption, and a lot of people would say things to me that maybe weren't the nicest things, or they didn't, just because they didn't understand. But to have parents that were so open, and then to have friends that even if they didn't understand, they still were supportive and still tried to understand, that's what made the big difference versus others who weren't necessarily understanding.
And one of the things that has changed a lot over the years has been the knowledge about what makes a good adoption experience. for birth parents, for adopted children, and for adoptive parents. And so I would encourage all the audience, whether it's be on Facebook or wherever, that you should, involve yourself with. Adoption is just not a one-time experience. It's like a lifelong journey. And the ones that are most successful, whether it be as an adopted child or a birth mother or an adopted family, are the ones who embrace the adoption and the adoption community. So today there's organizations like United for Adoption that does, monitors legislation, does advocacy, does training. Just not last month we had a wonderful event called Princesses of Color, and where all the little adopted children came to an event dressed in princess costumes and Thor costumes and Captain America costumes, and so you had black Thors and Hispanic flashes, and so they could see that in their culture they could be heroes too. And so I think there's a lot better knowledge today about what makes this a successful experience. And so having friends that are adopted and those things, I think helps a lot, because it normalizes the experience, and so the child doesn't grow up feeling that they're so different because of that experience. Okay, so Ray, this one is for you too. Okay. Coming from an adoptee's viewpoint, what advice would you give to adoptive parents as they're raising their adopted child through different stages of development, like childhood, adolescent, teenage years, all that kind of stuff, since now you're 26?
So, advice I would give is start from the very beginning, letting them know that they're adopted. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's actually really cool. It makes you such a unique person, I feel like. Growing up, like I mentioned before, people would tell me, you're a mistake, you aren't supposed to be here, like, you weren't loved enough because they couldn't take care of you, your birth mom gave you up, and many other things. But I always had supportive parents that would tell me how much they loved me, and same with friends and things like that. And so I think just throughout my life, knowing first off that I'm adopted, and then second off, just knowing how loved I am is really important things you can do as adoptive parents, because sometimes you are going to feel out of place, sometimes you are going to feel like you're not loved enough, sometimes you are going to feel like you were a mistake, but knowing that people have a greater perspective than you. And yeah, growing up it was hard, especially, junior high, high school, it's hard in general, but sometimes if people didn't understand adoption, it would get a little harder. But knowing that your parents do love you and that you love them, that's what really made a big difference.
Thank you. Sounds like you have pretty special parents. So, okay, so let's, now the last 3 questions are for everybody. Okay? And Ray, since you have the mic at that end, I'll start with you. So, what's been the most positive aspect of your adoption journey?
So I think when I think about that, what's really cool is because it's been so open with my parents of being adopted, it's kind of actually changed my viewpoints of where I want to go in life and what I want to do. I got into the field of social work. I'm interested in helping others. I'm interested in being more involved in adoptions and helping others understand more about adoption. I think that's a really big positive aspect for me. It's just because of my own personal experience, I want others to realize how beautiful adoption is and how important it is in this world to share that love for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, because it does, like you say, it opens up your eyes to how important adoption is in this world and how needed it is. And the positive for me is just being able to see the joy that adoption brings, not only for the birth family, but for the adopted family. There is joy all around with the process, and I am very grateful that it is getting out there more. Things like this, we're able to get more information out there to help alleviate the fear that is often the cause of many problems. People worried that, you know, the birth mom might change their mind, or, I mean, things happen in life and that's hard, but for the positive and the most part, it's a wonderful experience, and if you can push past your fears and there again communicate, I think it really has opened up a wonderful aspect of the adoption.
Positive for me that's really helped is that I still get to see her grow up. I'm not sitting there in my bed at 2 a.m. wondering how she is, who she is, what does she look like. At 2 a.m. I'm getting a picture. But I get to see her grow up, and I get to be part of their family, not just the 4 of them, but their whole family. And that is a big positive for me, because I didn't lose anything the day I had her. I gained way more.
So I think for me, the biggest thing is, of course, our daughter. She's a miracle. And she's, I mean, we were happy before, and we have a great marriage, and we did before, but with her in our lives, it's like 100 times better. She's just amazing, and she's the light of our lives. And we joke with each other that even if we had been able to have our own kids, we don't think that they would have been nearly as cute as she is. But so, I mean, she's just amazing. She's just perfect for us, and we're just blown away by her.
To spin off of what everyone else has said, of course she is the most positive thing that for us that has come out of adoption, but also seeing and feeling the love that surrounds adoption, and everyone that loves her, her birth families, our families. I'm at the grocery store and someone comments on how cute she is. I'm so excited to tell them that she's adopted, and then they get so excited, and you can just feel the love that surrounds this special child.
So going back, the question would be to all of you, as far as your experience, maybe with adoption, what would be the most either negative, challenging, difficult aspect of your adoption experience?
The most difficult for me, and it's probably just because I'm weird, is you talk to adoptive couples, and I knew that there was going to be some kind of guilt that I would feel that I was taking someone's baby in a way, and I know that that's not the case. I didn't think that it would affect me as much as it did. Prior to her having our little girl, I would get comments of, she can change your mind, don't get your hopes up. And then after our little girl was in our family, I would get comments of, that's so sad for her, how could someone give away their baby? And I think it's just comments that people don't understand the adoption, but where I was already feeling the guilt. And of course they didn't mean them as negative comments. It was just how I was already feeling guilt and hard on myself. But that was probably the hardest part for me.
Of course I did. Like, if I didn't love her, I probably wouldn't be in my situation. I loved her enough to give her what she needed, plus more. So just negative comments, and then the grieving has been the hardest part for me.
misconceptions and people's ideas. Family members who, older generation, comments about, that's not the thing to do.
You don't have to look down this way when you say that.
I meant in my family. Yeah, just people that you would think are supposed to love and support you and give you that needed support are sometimes the ones with the cruelest comments. So I think that's been the hardest for me, is hearing some of those comments from trusted people that that make you feel guilty or feel bad for the choices that you make.
I think mine, as I mentioned a little earlier, is just people who don't understand the process of adoption and realizing that you are a unique person. And I think for me, it was just the negative comments that I said, you're not wanted, you were not wanted, you're a mistake. Just a lot of things like that was probably the negative impact, just because you'd feel like these people should be the ones loving and supporting you if they're your friends, and then they say things like that, and it makes it even harder. And so you're already insecure as a teenager, and so it would make it a lot harder then too. But I think just the negative comments and the lack of understanding from others.
So last question, coming back this way. So before we ask the audience for questions. If you were given advice to someone who is either adopting the child or placing the child for adoption, what would your advice be?
So being the child that was adopted, I would kind of give two little pieces of advice with that. The first advice would be love the birth mother. That's a big thing that I've thought a lot about, and my parents have been such great examples of that and sharing that in my life. But I think realizing the sacrifice that she's making would be to just love the birth mom. And then the other thing is to, as an adopted child, realize that you are special and that life is going to be great for you, and that that you are so loved. And so just thinking a lot about that you are loved by so many people, even those that you don't know, in my case.
Okay, for the adoptive family, I would just advise to let the child know from the very start that they are adopted, and that that's an important part of them, and that it makes them special. Secrecy is never a good thing, and so to be open and honest with the child, and to let them know that they are loved, and to talk positively about the birth mom and the birth father. A lot of times, unfortunately, there's not good circumstances on one side or the other, and the person may not be a really good type of person or making good choices in their life at that time. But I think that we always need to talk positively to the child so that they don't take on those negative aspects, that they know that they're loved, and that that the choices made for them were done and with their best interest. And I think for the birth family, and birth moms particularly, to find support, find people you can talk to that will help you through the process of understanding what you're going through, the feelings that you're having. So don't do it alone. Don't think that it's not normal to experience the things you are, but to be able to look for the support that you can to be able to help you through.
I agree with my mom on the adoptive family is just to let the child know that they are adopted, and that it's one of their special traits, because it is very special. For a birth family, my best advice is to get all the information you think you need. Don't be afraid to ask questions, even if it's something you think is dumb or silly, ask it, because you're not the only one. People are probably thinking the same thing, because I hear so many stories of like, oh, you can do that? You can request that? Yes, you can. So just get all the information you think you want or need, and just make sure you know your plan.
For the adoptive couple, I would say, I agree with everything that's been said, but in addition to those, I would say to get to know the birth mother, and the birth family. It's either before the baby comes or after. We were fortunate enough to do it before, but to kind of get to know them first and love them first, and for the gift that they are giving you, and kind of gain that relationship with them and their family. For the birth family, I would say be open with the adoptive couple, the adoptive family. If you are having a hard day, then be open and talk to them about that.
Absolutely. The only other thing I would add is just information is your friend. So anyone who's looking to adopt, just get as much information as you can. And couples, people who have adopted are great resources, and everyone's excited to tell their story. So don't hesitate to ask adopted couples about their experience or any questions you have. They'll be happy to share. And that's probably the most helpful. One of the most helpful things that we did was talking to other people who had adopted, give us a good idea of what to expect and what the process was like.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take some questions from the audience and from just audience questions today. So is there any questions from the audience at all? Is there any burning questions? If there's not, that's okay. Because it's already 7:15. So any questions? I see some brewing, but I don't see any coming, because yes, there's one on the scene.
As a birth mother too, I'm asking you guys, so just like you, how it's been a couple years with your daughter, so with mine. My question is for you guys, because you guys are the adopt parents. Mine, they're just like yours. They're amazing. They're great. They're open. They're talkative, communicative. But my daughter is getting traits of her birth father, and they tend to, I don't want to say they excuse it, but they tend to be like, oh, well, so-and-so does this in my family. Like, that's kind of what he did, you know? So I'm not trying to say I don't want to say they're forgetting about him, like, because I'm not fond of him lately, you know? But I just want him to be acknowledged. So I guess I'm asking you, like, how can I ask them to acknowledge him? Because regardless of it all, he is part of her. And as much as I may not like it, 90% of the time I still have to accept it because how much I love her. And I don't know how to talk to them about, like, well, her height's because of him, it's not me, thank goodness, or else because I don't want her that short, but yeah. But it's just like stuff like that, like she's a lefty and I'm not. So it's, it's just one of those things that you can't, like, I guess I don't know how to ask them to, I don't know if they even tell her, like I know they tell her about me, and I we have very good communication, very open, very good, and all that, like, but I think my only worry I have lately, because she'll be 4 in April, so this is a little bit, but in time I've been like, okay, they'll tell her more and more, but for me, I don't want to bring it up because I don't know how they feel. And I don't like bringing it up because it doesn't make me feel good. But I also know that as much as I can't stand the man, I have to acknowledge him, because without him I wouldn't have her, and neither would they. So for me, I guess I'm asking, how do I approach that without hurting them? Even though for the the adoptive father particularly, I'm saying mainly not for him, because I think it's mainly him that's having, like, I think that's what hurts him. because it's like, well, if it's, since it wasn't mine, I don't want to bring it up, but I think that's my question, like, I don't know how to have them acknowledge him, like they acknowledge me. And that's up to them. I know that, I guess, as she gets older, I don't want to be the one when she's like 16, going, what happened to dad? You know, I guess I don't want that all on me. I would like some of that like already open.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious how, because that's my situation that I'm going with them right now.
That's an amazing question, and one thing that stood out to me as you said that, so something we've thought about is that every piece of her is special and important and needs to be celebrated, and so it is great if they can learn to share that, you know, this detail of her comes from her birth father, and that way she knows everything about herself, and that everything is awesome and special and exciting. And so I honestly think, even though it's kind of the hardest way to go about it, but just telling them exactly what you just said. And it could be in a letter or an email or a text message, and just non-confrontational, but just, hey, this has been weighing on my mind. It's for some reason, or not for some reason, but it feels really important to me, and so I just wanted to bring this up to you guys. And even if it does maybe like step on toes at first, or maybe, you know, annoy one or both of them, eventually they'll kind of get over that, and they will, and they'll see the importance of it, and at least to some extent implement that type of thing. So I think that's the best thing, is just open and honest communication.
Any other comment from anybody on the panel?
I've got with Steve.
Yes, Dennis, go ahead.
So I worked with Steve, about 500 placements personally, I believe, the last 4 years. And the adoptive couples usually know the birth father through the birth mom. And so usually the best thing that can happen is the birth mom present him in a very favorable light. But it's real easy for that not to happen, because there's usually some kind of trauma, the dynamic that goes on, especially at placement, that leaves him in a less favorable light. And because everybody's experiencing loss, what the adoptive family will have a tendency to do is over-identify with what the birth mom is saying. So she may say the slightest thing about being frustrated with, or I wish they'd do this or that, and suddenly in their mind, he becomes an ever-increasing monster. And so their approach is more to protect the birth mom than anything else, but it looks like by doing that, they're rejecting him. And so you model that, and if a letter came, like you said, I would start the letter off by saying, I may have put him in a less than favorable light on occasion, and it's fair for me now to say to you, here's some real qualities I see in him, here's some things he really enjoyed, here's a sport he's into that maybe someday your son will enjoy as well. Something like that can have a huge impact on him, because you're the gateway. The birth mom's the gateway. They're probably not going to go out and fellowship him or have tacos tonight. That's just probably not going to happen.
Okay, any other questions that might be brewing in the audience? Yes.
Can I just ask, sorry, I can't remember your name, but the birth mother.
Marisa.
Marisa, I'm sorry. That you have such an open relationship and really a friendship with your daughter's parents. How do you see that in 10 years or 20 years? Do you see that continuing as it is now?
I do see it continuing just because of how great they are. I know with time, communication might get less and less, especially because I know that they're trying to adopt again. So I know that another birth mom's going to come into play, and I know all these things, life happens. I know I'll start going to school, this, that.
And you'll probably have a husband or whatever and other children.
Yeah, eventually I'll have all that too. So I've even told them that when I get married, I want them to be part of my wedding. So I don't see it changing. I see it growing, and the next birth mom that comes along, not only will they take them into their arms, but my family will too.
Thank you.
So we happen to have her adoptive parents in the audience, and so, and Destiny is not usually this quiet. So, Destiny, do you have any comments? I know you were thinking about it necessarily, but.
Are there specific questions?
No, just, how do you see things being in 10 years?
A continuation of what they are now. Something that Marisa and I really love is that we both have an equal desire to allow Braylon, our adopted daughter, to grow with us. And she's only 2 now, so she doesn't have a lot of say or desire to do anything past cookies and nap time, right? But when she's 10 and she says, hey, I'm the only left hand in the family, where did that come from? I love that Marissa's a phone call away, or literally just down the street, and that we have a relationship where Braylon will never question where she's from or any of the beauties that come from adoption. And so to your question, 10 years from now, I think it'll be more of what we have now. More opportunities for growth, more opportunities for sharing, and ultimately more opportunities for love.
So Marisa might be in New York and you might be in California in 10 years, but you guys will still be family.
Lots of sleepovers.
FaceTime.
Yes.
So, okay, well, I guess maybe just in conclusion here tonight, I think, Eric, your comments about relationships are really important. So sometimes in even any kind of relationship, whether it be brother to brother or sister to sister or husband to wife, the things that work best is communication and talking and sharing feelings, even though they might be awkward or a little bit difficult. Those are some of the best times, and the best growth comes through those hard conversations. And so, I would always encourage people to, in appropriate ways to do that. That's what builds the relationship and makes it stronger. So let me, at the conclusion, first of all, thank everybody that has participated. No one's been paid to be here or paid to say whatever comments that they had to make. And, but we're grateful for them each as individuals and for your contributions tonight that will hopefully bless somebody's life that might hear it not only today, but as it's posted online so that people can observe and listen. You guys did a wonderful job, so let's give them a big hand. It's your turn now.
I just wanted to say one thing. Marisa, for Christmas this year, she made a special gift for the adoptive family. And I just want to kind of share what that was because I think it's true and I hope it opens up for so many people out there. It says on it, it has a picture of a tree and then trees in the background. And it says adoption, when your family tree becomes an orchard. And I truly believe that, where it just opens up to a larger family because a child can never have enough people love them.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So tonight's has been sponsored by Forever Bound Adoption, which is a licensed child placing agency in the state of Utah. I'd also encourage, as I've already mentioned, anybody can be a part of United for Adoption. I really encourage all members of the adoption triad, which is the adoptee, the birth parents, the adoptive couples, to be involved in groups that are trying to promote healthy adoption, to keep laws safe around adoption, and that would provide education so that we can learn more about this wonderful practice that has blessed so many of us. So thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate you being here.